Good morning and good evening. Welcome to the presentation of Global Adventures and Tours CTA mock. Let's look into the requirements at a very high level. Global Adventures Tours is a new company that specializes in booking of adventure-based tours across different continents. They have 500 different tour operators worldwide, and each of them has a staff of 20. The basic premise is the new system, which is to be developed on Salesforce, needs to support these tour operators as well as the adventure seekers who are the customers that participate in these tours. Looking into the org strategy, we are proposing a single org strategy with multi-currency enabled. There are no requirements as such dictated due to high data volume or any regulation or specific standards like HIPAA or PCI, GDPR that need to be implemented. And we have multi-currency and multilingual requirements as well. Coming to the user licenses model, it is pretty straightforward. We have four internal types of users. The first one is TOC or Tour Operator Coordinator. We are giving him the sales license because of the need to access leads. The same is true for Adventure Specialist. The Service Coordinator and the Service Coordinator Regional Manager is assigned the Service Cloud license because of the need to do omnichannel routing. The GAT Regional Manager, which forms part of the top management, they are given sales license as well as TCRM. Sales because of they need to access leads, and TCRM because we want to make sure they get access to granular reports using Tableau CRM. Then we have a set of external customers and partners. So one of them is Tour Operator Manager. There are 500 of these people. We are giving them CC plus license. This is because we need to have roles. There is a role hierarchy requirement for these type of users. The tour operator staff, which is there, they are basically residing below this level of the manager. They are 10,000 in number. They are assigned CC plus because of the need to access roles. The second requirement is that they also need access to reports and dashboard. It becomes easy if we assign them a roles license. If we assign them roles. Then adventure seekers are the people who are actually getting into the tours, booking those tours. 300K of them, we are giving them CC license, customer community license, no specific needs for advanced sharing. Everything could be done using sharing set. And for reporting needs, we are using LWC to prevent additional costs associated with CC+. Then we have the local tour guide, and they are also given CC license, customer community, because most of the objects they are accessing are covered by the customer community and advanced sharing is not needed. Next is the role model. At the very bottom, we have the tour operator coordinators who are organized by regions. They report to the regional manager for CAT within that specific region. Same thing is true with the adventure specialists. They are organized by regions and report to the CAT RM. The service coordinators are in their own hierarchy and they report to a service coordinator RM, which is again region based. And all of these internal roles report to a topmost role called as CEO. The TOC set of users, they own the external accounts and contacts. So in this case, the tour operator manager, which we saw in the user license, as well as the tour operator staff. These accounts are owned by TOC. They also own the adventure customers, the people who are kind of like participating or booking the tours. The adventure specialists are the owners of tour guides because they are the people who are responsible for assigning tour guides to specific tours. Now coming to the system landscape, let me just make it a bit bigger. So within the system landscape, we are using Service Cloud with sales, as we saw in the licenses. Within that, we are using omnichannel for routing needs, multi-currency, multilingual as the requirement is distributed across regions. We are using case escalation rules for certain use cases where if it is not resolved within a certain time period, a manager needs to be notified. Entitlements for more advanced use cases. as there are needs for specific SLAs that need to be followed. Conga Composer is used for document generation. We are also using Tableau CRM for specific reporting use cases we'll see, which are not possible through standard out-of-the-box reports. At the bottom, we have the ESB as well as the ETL. The ESB is interfacing with three systems. One is payment force, which we are assuming is going to have a REST API, and essentially all the payment information that is submitted by the tour operators as well as the adventure seekers is kind of like stored and federated by this payment force application. We are not retiring the Service Pro application, which is kind of similar to field service, but it's already in place. What we want to make sure is that we use the API to automate case creation and kind of like mitigate the current problem where there's a delay in sending those resources through field service that is already present inside a Service Pro application. Tour manager system, which is currently in place, that is going to get retired. All the data from this system will be injected back into Salesforce using an ETL tool. We'll use bulk API 2.0, make sure that T2 and cleansing is done. The order of data we'll look into, but essentially it's going to be tour contacts and accounts, the tour schedules, and related information. The bookings object is approximately 5 million, you'll see in the ERD, and we need to make sure that the information stored within that object is externalized. So we plan to use a data warehouse, which is hosted on Heroku, and on a planned frequency, which is configurable, we can remove the data from Salesforce and back it out inside this data warehouse. On the ESB side, again, we have a requirement where the tour operators have their own systems that need to talk to Salesforce, and we will make sure that that happens through the ESB and not a point-to-point connection. There are Sales Cloud instances which are already in use, but we have a requirement which says that CAT is going to make sure all the processes are standardized and they follow a common procedure. So it's recommended to not use these instances and retire them and migrate the data as well as any other uh, specific flows in the standardized process that will be implemented in the Salesforce instance. We want to use Okta for SAML SSO needs. There are multiple reasons for that. One is the support that is needed for automatic provisioning, deprovisioning of users. We also need to support two different protocols. One is Active Directory and the other is some LDAP based, which is not clear whether it is really Active Directory based LDAP or is it using something like Apache Active Directory. So we want to use Okta in this particular case, and it is used for internal employees as well as for the external tour operators. So we plan to use Okta for this. As far as the users are concerned, we are proposing to have a mobile publisher app for the adventure seekers or the customers because it's customer facing requirement. It will be customized based on the specific needs using LWC, and it will use user agent OpenID Connect flow to connect with Salesforce. Similarly, for the adventure seeker internal employees who need to access the actual tour operators, who need access to tour operators, they also have this need of a mobile application. So we plan to use SF mobile app since this is internal facing application. We don't want to do more customization. For social sign-on, we'll ensure that all providers are provisioned within Salesforce and the connections are made with the providers like Facebook, Google to allow adventure seekers to use those credentials. Two communities are proposed. One is for the tour operator, which is a customer community plus, and the other is for the tour guides. The tour operators are basically use this community to manage the tour and the schedules as well as the payment information, while the tour guide is going to look and register for those specific tours. So we'll look into the integration slide later on. Let's go to the ERD diagram. So as far as the ERD diagram is concerned, this is The key that we are using, it's private by default. This is for lookup. This symbol is used for master detail. C stands for custom object and LDB stands for large data volume. Let's start this ERD from the left hand side. We are assuming that we'll be using leads for the tour operator requests. The owner of this is the TOC, the tour operator coordinator. The leads will get converted into account and contact and not opportunity. Again, the owner is TOC. The tour operators would then be provisioned at this point of time, and they will be able to access the website or the community. And from that, they will be able to create a tour and associate what is known as a scheduled tour, a related object. So the tour object is representing one tour. It's kind of like the master for a tour. And these are specific instances. For example, 12 tours are scheduled throughout the year. We'll have 12 records, and they are linked to this tour in a master data relationship. The owner of this is the OP or the tour operator. OP is basically the operator. As far as scheduled tours are concerned, we are seeing around like 100K records and 10K records. So it's not really a LTP. Associated with each and every tour, we have this tour guides. So tour guide can be linked to multiple scheduled tours. So we are having this junction object called as assign guide that creates a many-to-many relationship. The tour guides are created by the adventure specialists, so they are the owners. Similarly, for every tour that is active, the adventure seekers or the customers can do a booking through their community. That's why we have a booking junction object, as this is a many-to-many relationship. A single customer could be part of multiple tours. So we want to support that requirement. Let me make this a bit bigger. We are seeing that the booking object is an LDB because it has around 5 million records. So that's where we want to use data backup archiving in place. Now, for every adventure seeker who is considered to be high risk and has a medical condition, we want to take a consent that they are participating in a tour which has its own risk. So this we want to implement using Salesforce consent management objects. The main advantage of that is it does not count towards the storage. So we have 300K records, tomorrow they become 1 million and we will have free storage for them. So the consent management objects, which are authorization form and the individual object that will be used in this case. It's a multiple relationship, one to many, because the same adventure seeker can be participating in multiple tours. So you need to take the consent for each one of them. We also have this case object, and essentially it's for any issues that are associated with that specific booking. The case object has an entitlement because there are requirements around specific SLAs that need to be followed to resolve the case based on the severity and other parameters. Once this case is resolved, the requirement is to take the performance of the SC or the person who actually solved that case. So we are doing it through a performance object. We want to make sure that we have a simplified data model. So the performance fields are denormalized. We're assuming that they will be stored in single record. And it's a many-to-many relationship between case adventure because adventure is going to rate the service coordinator on this case, and this will be the performance. So that's all about the ERD. Now we will jump to the business requirement section. So we covered this part, we covered the current systems. So let's look into the first requirement, which is tour operator management. So here the first requirement is that we want to streamline the process, which is currently to download a PDF, scanning the form and sending to tour operator coordinator. So for this we propose to use Web2Lead, and we're assuming that the number of requests are less than 500 per day so that we can use Web2Lead. If it's more, then we can use form assembly. TOC needs to be assigned in a round robin manner. So in this case, it's a lead assignment that needs to be done in a round robin. So basically the round robin is every person who is getting the lead assigned, they get assigned one after the other. So for this, we want to implement round robin using custom lead assignment via Apex because it's a region based. It gives us more control, and that's one of the reasons. And uh, in order to implement this, we'll basically have the list of TOCs, the tour operator coordinators, organized per region in some object and metadata. And Apex code can take that information, map it to the lead, and change the owner based on how the leads are coming into the system. So next is Get would like to capture supporting documentation. So in this case, we plan to use SF files. We are assuming it's less than 100 MB if they were to use a mobile app, but it's up to supported up to 2 GB. Get would like TOCs to be able to collaborate. So again, we plan to use Chatter, and in order to provide access on this lead to other TOCs, we can basically have a criteria-based sharing that shares this lead record to these others. Next, a registration score is calculated, and this process needs to be automated. So the scoring computation can be done through the flow, taking into account different fields which are there on the lead. And a flow can be triggered once the lead is actually saved. If the score is greater than 50, adventure specialist needs to be notified. They will verify the risk level. If the tour operator is deemed risky, the adventure specialist that is skilled is assigned to follow. So in this case, we'll basically have a custom user object field with attributes like locality and skill. The flow will look at the request and it will match the user with that locality. So basically it's a region or a sub-region within that. Once the match happens, the flow will send email, chatter, or task message to that particular AS. We'll do epic sharing on lead because we are trying to match it with a specific AS, so or adventure specialist. So epic sharing is needed in order to provide access to this AS on the lead. The AS can then update the risk flag. If the risk flag is updated and it is found to be high risk, then we'll again fire a flow, or the flow will get fired. It will find another user by looking at a user object, and his profile is like adventure specialist. And does he or she have that high risk skill? If such a user is found, the Apex sharing will be created to give such a user access to this lead. Again, notification will be sent to them, and we will trigger the approval process. The assigned AS sends an email, so it's essentially a quick action send email on the lead with merge template. So this email is sent to a tour operator. So we want to use this using a merge template and using Conga Composer. Upon review, AS can choose to approve or cancel the registration through their mobile device. So we looked into the mobile device that the AS are using as a SF mobile app, internal app, and as we saw here in the approval process, this approval process is basically used for approving or rejecting that request. If the score is less than 50 or has completed follow-up, RM is going to approve, RM for approval. So again, this is the way we configure the approval process. If the approval process is skipped if the score is less than 50. If the score was greater than 50 and that AS has approved it, it's going to trigger a new approval process for the RM. And the RM is found out by basically mapping it on the lead object. Once approved, TAC then onboards the tour operator. The tour operator details will be automatically copied. So in this case, we'll have the TOC triggering the lead conversion to account contact, and we don't need opportunity at this point. Once that happens, we'll have a flow that provisions the contacts as community users. We can also use Apex in this case for more granular control. Specific profiles will be assigned and welcome emails will be sent to the tour operator contacts. They can then click those emails, register, and then will be able to access the website. The system should create a letter in the local language of a tour operator. So for this, we plan to use Flow Apex, which can call the Conga Composer API. This can happen once the conversion happens or contact or account gets created. The Conga Composer will be able to basically use multiple templates which are pre-created based on the language or the locality. And then we can also send email as part of that flow. Toward operator's contacts are set up as a creditor in the payment force system. The creditor ID from the payment force will be marked on the toward operator record. So for this, we'll use our integration I001, which is mentioned here. So in this integration, what we are doing, let me resize this window a bit. Okay, let me do it later on. So in this integration, what we are doing is we are sending the payment information from Salesforce to the payment force via the ESP. The pattern uses fire and forget remote colon securities.https. Here the flow or the sequence is that we will have a flow that publishes a platform event, ESP listens to it. It invokes the payment force API, which we are assuming is REST. The payment force then creates an account contact based on the information received from the ESP through this platform event, and it returns an ID back to the ESP. ESP then updates the SF account object with this particular ID, which is nothing but the creditor ID. So this completes our first set of requirements. The second set of requirements are around tour proposal and scheduling. So in this case, proposed tours go through a process of proposal and negotiation. Tour operator can specify maximum capacity and 12-month schedule of dates. So we are not using opportunity basically to save higher license cost, and we plan to use a custom tour object as we saw in the data model and tour schedule object. So every tour basically has a tour object which is a child of that tour. So one tour can have like 12 or whatever that sequence is. So no opportunity is used to save the operational expenditure. Any AS for the region can review the proposed tour. So tour and tour schedule are shared via the sharing group because the owner of this is the tour operator. So we want to share it with the AS, which is an internal user. We plan to use sharing group. GAT would like a user-friendly method for tour guides to review and update the status. So here we're assuming that the tour guides are assigned by the AS manually to the tour. It's not really mentioned how the tour guides are coming into the system. So we are assuming that the AS manually finds them and assigns them to a tour. And LWC is used for user friendliness. Proposed system should automatically check that tour guides are not double booked. So here what we can do is we can define a flow or trigger that checks the assigned guide object. The assigned guide object is basically a junction object between a tour guide and the scheduled tour, which is this object. So the trigger or flow will check an overlap of dates. If the tour guide is booked on that specific date, he is not allowed to register, or for the we won't allow the AS to basically assign him on the same date. So this is the object that will check. Create a pre-formatted PDF that displays the tour and schedule information. So again, we want to use Conga Composer merge templates, which are language and region specific on the tour and tour schedule object. Next, once the AS has completed their review, creditor's account is debited in payment force and with an amount that is set by regionally. So here we want to use the price book entry and product. The price book is region specific, so basically it's just the region name, and the product is dummy tour. The price book entry is multi-currency enabled and region specific, as it is linking this price book with this product. And we are kind of like creating a relationship between the tour and the price book entry. So the total cost computed is via flow or trigger using the number of tours. So we know like how many tours are scheduled, and we have the cost of one tour in that specific region in some amount. So using this information, these three objects, we can compute what is the total cost of this tour. And once we do that, we trigger integration I002. So in this integration I002, It's basically sending the payment information to payment force from Salesforce. So in this case, we are using request and reply because the success or failure needs to be seen immediately. So here we have a flow that will invoke the external services which are created by the ESP. These external services which are hosted on the ESP will invoke the payment API, which is REST-based. Payment API will do whatever it needs to do and will return a response back to the ESP, either success or failure, and that response is then shown onto the user screen. So let me make this a bit bigger. All right, so that's with this I002. Now, if the account is successfully debited, the published tour and the schedule automatically created and made available for sale. So here is basically like if the payment is successful, we want to make sure that we publish the tour and the tour schedule on the website. So it's essentially a status change. Email notification is sent to the tour operator. 6 minus with details and schedule. So again, we have a flow that will check for status change on the tour object. And essentially it will use Conga Composer and email dispatch to basically send this email. The tour operator can mark the tour to auto-renew. A new set of tour dates will automatically be created. They should also debit the creditor's account in Payment Force and update the tour system operating system. The renewal or update of the tour operating system should not occur if the debit is not successful. So here multiple things are happening. First of all, we'll have an auto renew flag on the tour object. Then we'll have a batch job that checks daily if the auto renew date is today or tomorrow. So again, this auto renewal date, when this should auto renew, must be present on this object. The batch will check this if it is today or tomorrow. If yes, then we execute the flow I002, which is same as we discussed. Essentially, it's a payment that needs to be sent. And we'll basically create a new schedule post that. If the payment is successful, new schedule will be created post that, copying the previous schedule. Then we'll execute integration I003, which is between the ESP and the touring system, tour operator system. So this integration is an RCI remote colon. The primary purpose is to send the updates from Salesforce to the tour operator systems regarding auto renewals and what's the new schedule. So here what we are saying is once the payment is successful, the ESP will invoke the correct tour operators API. So ESP needs to orchestrate that because it will know like the ID or some other parameter that will help them choose which API needs to be invoked that actually points to that tour operator, and it will send that information to them, and the rest will be handled by the tour operator system. Next set of requirements are around adventure request. A potential adventurer should be able to view and search for published tours and view their schedules. So we are here assuming that they are already signed up and they have an account, and on the community there will be a tab that allows them to see this information. The sharing rules will be defined so that everybody has view all access for published tours and their published schedules. The user can filter on the type of adventure, risk level, and location. So here we want to make sure the experience for the user is very good. So we propose to use LWC component. We'll bring data from the tour and tour schedule object. Display user-friendly global map. For this, we want to use LWC map component. The tour object, which has the source and destination information, will have geolocation fields that will help us to map them and show them. The adventurer can request that the system suggest tours booked in the past 5 years. So again, we'll have an LWC component, which is nothing but a recommendation kind of component. We'll need to implement a custom recommendation algorithm that looks into the past data, past 5 years booking, and has some logic that shows them these are the best suited tours for you to look at. The other option too is use instant predictive suggestions if possible. The adventurer can then make a booking for a particular tour daily. So for that, we'll create a booking object, which is essentially a junction between the scheduled tour, as well as the adventurer who's trying to do the booking. So we are creating this booking object in this case. Next, the system should accept payment either using new account information or account information stored in payment force. So this requirement is very similar to the previous integration that we saw between Salesforce and payment force, so not repeated. System should prevent bookings if capacity is exceeded. So in this case, the scheduled tour object capacity field is checked against the max capacity of tour while creating the booking. So we have the scheduled tour, which is a child of tour. The tour has the max capacity, and the scheduled tour is basically containing a count of bookings. So we'll compare those two fields and we can make that decision if the capacity is exceeded or not. Next, the tour operators can make bookings on their own, and this should update the CAT systems to reflect current capacity. So in this case, what we are saying here is that we are making an assumption that the tour operators, although they are booking new customers on their side, they are just sending the capacity, like how many customers they are booked, and not the actual customers. So this capacity that they have booked on their site will basically update it on the scheduled tour object, which is our junction object on a different field. So we have two fields. One is the capacity currently through Salesforce by looking at the number of booking objects associated with this. And there's a new field that basically tells us the capacity that the tour operator has, or in terms of like how many bookings they have done on their site. So combining these two fields and comparing with the total capacity field on the tour object, we can make judgmental calls whether the tour is booked, overbooked, or underbooked. So there is also integration I004 involved, since the tour operators are sending that information to Salesforce. Again, this is happening through the ESP. We are using RCI remote call-in as well as RCI again to send information back to Salesforce. So in this case, the tour operator systems, they will know like which specific API needs to be invoked on the ESP side. So it's going to be a REST API, and ESP then can use RCI basically to update Salesforce schedule tour object with the new capacity field. Adventure has booked on a high-risk tour, has a medical condition. Adventure electronically signs a waiver acknowledging the risk. So in this case, we want to again use an LWC component, and we'll have HTML canvas enabled for e-sign. The information that is captured through this component is actually saved in the out-of-the-box consent management objects, authorization form content, and individual model that comes with consent. The basic advantage for doing that is there is no storage associated with these objects, and these are tailor-made for such requirements. Next, we have the adventurer support. The adventurer can post questions and get responses from public or from tour guides. They can post their photos and make comments. So we want to make sure that we enable chatter on the scheduled tour objects, and it is used for these purposes. A pool of service coordinators are assigned based on region and nature of request, and they can choose to work on the request. For this, we want to use omni-channel skill-based routing, as there are multiple reasons for that. One is it's the nature of the request, so specific skills might be needed based on the request type, and they can choose. So the choose option is nicely supported in omnichannel. Either you can accept or deny a specific work item, and we want to make sure we are creating cases for these work items. The SC does not accept the request in one day, the RM is notified via email. So here we want to use case escalation rules. And with case escalation rules, so one of the problems with case escalation rules is we cannot define a user dynamically. If that dynamic if the manager needs to be defined dynamically, we use a process builder. critical priority cases, the SC must be reminded every 4 hours. So again, here we are saying that the omnichannel or schedule flow checks all cases with owner, not SC. So all the cases which do not have the owner as the service coordinator, those are checked via a schedule flow. Sorry, this is not omnichannel. And it creates a custom notification every 4 hours with target user set as SC of the region and nature of the request. Next, we have certain adventures in medical conditions will require higher response levels. Those with medical conditions have a 5-day window for resolution. So for here we have 14-day and 5-day window of resolution. So these requirements can be met through case entitlement based on the nature of the case. We can dynamically assign an entitlement, and the entitlement process will have milestones and actions associated with this 14 and 5-day window. Updates to the request need to be integrated with the field dispatch system. This needs integration I004, which is between SF, ESP, and the service pro, and we're sending case information. The first is fire and forget from SF to ESP, and then next is remote procedure invocation from ESP to service pro. So here the idea is that we'll have a flow that will publish a platform event. ESP will listen to it. It will extract the case information and invoke the REST API on the service pro side, and then the service pro system will take over from that point. GAT also wants adventures to be able to chat with service coordinators. So for this, we have web chat. The chat widget will be embedded inside the mobile, and we will have omnichannel on the web chat so that the web chat requests are distributed equally and correctly. GAT computes or calculates the number of assistance requests that are fault of the tour operator. If more than 10 occur in a given year, the risk level of the tour operator is upgraded. It is downgraded if there are less than 3. So in this case, what we want to do is the service coordinator will set a field fault of tour operator on case. So they will make that determination. This fault or this case, the reason for this case is because of the fault of the tour operator on the case. Once that happens, we'll have a flow that updates the risk count on the tour operator account record. So every tour operator has account record, the risk count will increase. And then we'll have a formula that updates the risk level of that particular tour operator. So either it will downgrade or upgrade it based on the count. GAT would like to track feedback and performance of service coordinators. So for this, we plan to use a performance object as we saw inside the ERD diagram. The performance object is linking the adventurers who are giving the performance rating on a specific case which is linked to a booking, and we know like who the service coordinator is associated with the case because those are the owners. So once the performance object is created, it captures the performance, and this will typically happen, the capturing of the performance, when the case is closed. We'll basically post a link via email or through chatter message for the adventurer to click, and they will be taken to their portal where this form will be present. It will be pre-filled with the case details, and a feedback will be seeked, and this object will be created. So this completes our business requirements. Now let's move to the data migration requirement. So one of the critical requirements here is that data in existing systems have a large number of duplicates. So for this, what we plan to do is we plan to use ETL to extract data from the tool management system. We want to make sure it's pre-staged. We clean and dedupe it using some algorithm like SoundX. Then the data is transformed, mapped, and put into a staging table because we have two types of ETL operations. One is a big bang because there's huge amount of data and it's an ongoing system. So we want to make sure that we do this pre-migration step and stage all the data and upload it within the Salesforce instance. And when we are going live, just before that, we'll again run this process, which is basically going to be the data migration, and then move it to Salesforce. The order is going to be like the user object is going first, then we have the account and contact representing the tour operator, which are present in this system, and the actual tours and schedule. Certain considerations will make OWD as public, turn off the automation, which are workflows, triggers, enable deferred sharing, group records by parent ID to avoid locking, then do the load, use bulk API 2.0 with parallel mode for faster processing, validate if everything is fine, and after that basically reverse the steps. Create OWD as per the objects, private or public read only. Sharing is then created, sharing records, and the sharings are executed in deferred mode and parallel. And finally, the automation which is turned off is turned in. Accessibility requirements. So the requirements around Active Directory, LDAP, SSO, these we already covered in our system landscape. So we'll look into the sharing needs here. TOCs can only view and edit registration requests and tour operators that have been created for the region. So for this, we'll use CBS, criteria-based sharing on lead. TOC are owners of the external accounts and contacts. Tour operators are only able to manage and draft tours and schedules that they are responsible for. So in this case, we want to give view access on the tour and schedule object for the tour operator's profile, and a separate permission set is created which only gives them edit access onto these two objects. Once the tour is approved, there is a status change. The flow and Apex will remove this edit permission which was given to this profile, and immediately the tour operators will not be able to edit those tours and schedules. Tour operators and office manager. So in this case, we use portal role hierarchy, and that's why we need the roles in CC plus license. Draft tours and the schedules are only visible to the AS by region. Published tours and the schedules are visible to all the users. So here we use criteria-based sharing. Internal users can view all adventures and their tour bookings. So profile is view all access on booking object, and criteria-based sharing on adventure person account to share those records with all internal users. TOC can view and edit the number of fatalities, injuries. So this field itself can be controlled by profile field level access. AS can view all tour operator registration requests and accept those that are noted as high risk, in which case only AS trained to manage high risk the region can view them. So this can be done using CBS, criteria-based sharing. AS is added in region-specific high-risk handler public group. Adventurers can only view their own contact information, tour bookings, and assistance requests. So we'll create a sharing set on contact, booking, and related portal user will provide access to the case. Tour guides can only view details of tour operators 6 months prior to the scheduled tours. So we'll have a batch job that runs daily. It scans all scheduled tours. If any of the tours is 6 months away, we'll create Apex sharing for the tour guides over the scheduled tours, and we know they already are linked using the assigned guide object. SCs and their manager should be able to view the adventure assistant request assigned to that SC. So in this case, no criteria-based sharing or the sharing. Case is private. Omnichannel sends case request to the service coordinator. SC accepts, and then he'll have access. Manager in higher role. Next, we'll go to the reporting requirements. The adventurer needs to be able to view history of their travel for the past 2 years. So we want to basically use LWC and prevent reports and dashboards so that we don't need to use a higher license CC plus. So we want to use LWC, use CC license, and create a view on the booking object and any information that is archived in the data warehouse. So this backend will federate that and provide a singular view. TOCs require dashboard and reports of travel, schedules, and bookings for the past 2 years. So in this case, since this object is archived, we want to use Tableau CRM, and TOCs will have access to it. Tour operators require a report of their upcoming tours and schedules. So in this case, CC Plus license is already used to release reporter and dashboards for tour operators. Standard report will be built joining tour, scheduled tour, and booking objects, and the information is displayed. Office managers of tour operators require a report, so they are in the hierarchy as well, and the same access will provide them details about what is needed. CAT management requires a dashboard showing a summary of travel booking trends for the past 7 years. Again, we provide Tableau CRM licenses for them. There are certain project specific requirements which are pretty standard, and they can be done using steering committees, COEs, change management, and having a good environment strategy, which is already covered. Thank you for your time for this presentation.